Good sticks, everyone. Welcome to the Captain Avalanche Fancast, your unofficial source for all things Colorado Avalanche hockey and more from a fan perspective, hosted by me, Captain Avalanche Corey. And why did they beat the Stars? Dumb. Now, we're no insiders. We're not inside the locker room face-to-face with our favorite players, but we hope to create a relatable and welcoming environment because we're just like all of you listening. Fans. Fans with a deep passion for the game of hockey, and in this case, the Colorado Avalanche. Between our two teams, betwixt our two teams, 8 games have been played since we were last with you. That is a lot of hockey in such a short amount of time. Both the Sharks and the Avs had a period where they played 3 games in 4 days and 4 games in 6. There shall be no special sections today because if there were, we would have no way of getting out of here in under 3 hours, let alone 2. So we'll dive right in with some themes of power, because each game had something that stuck out. Therefore, let's not delay and let's explore 8 games from a fan perspective on the Captain Avalanche Fancast. I lied, Dom. I'm going to deviate very quickly because I saw the Stanley Cup tonight, or at least one of the 3 Stanley Cups. I saw that.
I know, that was so cool when you sent me that photo. That I jealous to even be that close to Lord Stanley's Cup. I'm sorry, you're teaching me something new right now, so maybe the fun fact is coming early, or I'll have to be patient for later, but there are 3?
Yes, so there is one that is always in the Hockey Hall of Fame, so that one just stays there, because imagine if the Cup was traveling, but somebody came to visit at the Hall of Fame and they didn't see a Stanley Cup there. That'd be kind of lame. So there's one that is always at the Hall of Fame. I think there's one, obviously there's one that like travels 300 days out of the year. So that one's always going around. And then I think there's one that's like with the team that's won it most recently or something, or the other one also travels, or maybe there's like a historic one. I can't quite remember what the third one is, but yes, there are 3. There are 3 Stanley Cups, in fact.
And are they all engraved like
Yes, they are all identical. Although some have different dents and dings. So the ones that are handled by the players have a bit more of the, shall we say, history engraved in them than the display model, we'll say.
Yeah, a little bit more love on the surface.
Exactly. So that is why. It is strictly for the fact that they always want to make sure there is one on display at the Hockey Hall of Fame. But obviously the one that came in tonight was the traveling one. And in case anybody's wondering, hey, that is actually not the closest I've been to the Stanley Cup, but have not gotten my picture with it yet. So hopefully the Avs win it this year, and Dom and I can maybe go get a photo session with the Stanley Cup. Or the Sharks win it in the future. That. Yeah, seriously.
Well,
and
both of those.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, tomorrow, the Avalanche are playing the Florida Panthers. I'll be at that game, so come say hello if you want to say hello. And they're celebrating the 96 Stanley Cup win. For those who don't know, the Avalanche beat the Florida Panthers in 4 games to clinch their first Stanley Cup. And so a lot of the alumni are in town, and there was an alumni event tonight at the Paramount Theater. It was super entertaining. These old players told a bunch of stories, and they're pretty open about it. I won't get into some of the stories that they said tonight. I'll tell you guys a different time, but it was pretty entertaining, I have to say. And they're all pretty funny. Also, Sandis Ozolinsh, legendary number 8 defenseman for the Colorado Avalanche. Did not know he was Russian, first of all, and he was one of the most talkative guys. Very thick Russian accent, but super funny. Super funny guy. So there you go, everybody.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear more of that story details another time. And, regardless, I just got to say and put it out there so that we have to stick to it sometime down the line. But I feel like we need to, at some point when it works for us, even if it's not for another decade, you and I have to take a pilgrimage together to the Hockey Hall of Fame to go see the Cup there and just go to the actual Hall of Fame. I feel like I don't think you'd been, I definitely haven't. So especially if it's both of our first time, we should certainly make an effort to go together.
I actually live in the Hockey Hall of Fame. That's why I'm Captain Avalanche. I split my living days between Ball Arena and the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's the only thing that makes sense. But no, I have not been to the hall. I have not been to the hall. It is definitely, you are exactly correct, on my list of things to do. And I think that'd make a very fun series. The Captain Avalanche Fancast visits the Hockey Hall of Fame. So Look out for that one day, because that is a great idea, Dom. We should definitely do that. And if you have been to the Hockey Hall of Fame, tell us about it. Hit us up with what your favorite parts were. We would love to hear about it. Tell us what we got to see. Tell us what we can't miss at the Hockey Hall of Fame.
I'm not going to lie. There was a moment there where I was like, wait, are you like the Stanley Cup? Are there actually 3 of you?
Yes.
One that always lives at the Hockey Hall of Fame, one that's always at Ball Arena, and then the one that I get to talk to all the time?
Dude, I fucking wish there were 3 of me. Oh my God. My life would be so much easier if I could split the time of everything that I needed to do. I would just have one guy strictly on fancast and social media activities. One guy'd be working a job. Another guy would just, I don't know, be beaten off in a corner. I'm not sure what the third guy'd be doing, but yeah.
Oh, God. We've already gone off the rails quickly here, folks.
Oh, boy. All right. We'll get back on track here. So lots and lots of games here. First and foremost, the Islanders and the power of friendship. We all knew it would happen eventually. We would have preferred that it didn't, but it did. The Avalanche suffered their second regulation loss all season in 27 games so far. It was handed to the Burgundy and Blue by the Islanders on Long Island, or in Long Island, I suppose, and apparently it was the power of friendship that did the Avs in and no other factors whatsoever. To be perfectly honest, I wasn't even too mad. It sucks when you lose. You don't ever want to see your team lose, but the Avalanche simply don't. And if they're losing once every 10 or 11 games in regulation, that is, I think I could, live with that. This pace is still absolutely insane and still set for a record-breaking season. The short of it is the Islanders wanted this, and they wanted it badly. Every team has been bringing their best against the Avs, and it has been demonstrated particularly in this latest set of games that the Avs have been pressing through. Not only that, but the Avalanche apparently just don't play well in Long Island, which prior records hadn't very much mattered in nearly any other games this season. But Long Island is just not a kind place, as the Avs were only 3-13, and the OT is escaping me. But it has not gone well in Long Island, and that did not change on this day. One thing that has been particularly funny to me this year is that injuries are just not affecting some teams. The Avalanche have been one of those teams, and now when they get players back like Val Nichushkin, the team is just so deep that he plays on the third line. The right choice at the moment, but it just speaks to the depth that the Avalanche have. Anyways, the Stars are, unfortunately, another team that injuries don't affect. And going into this game against the Islanders with 2 big players out for them in Palmieri and Romanov, I question if those injuries would affect their play, like how Jack Hughes being out for the Devils affects that team. The short answer, it did not affect the Islanders at all. Blackwood was tested early and often, and on top of that, the Avalanche couldn't generate a flurry of shots or rebounds in front of Ilya Sorokin, nor generate any consistent zone pressure on the Islanders when, in turn, the Isles tilted the ice heavily in the direction of the Avalanche net, and that led to the first and most controversial goal of the game that truly shifted any momentum the Avalanche may have had away from them. The Islanders had chaos in front of the Avalanche net, and the puck popped out to Kyle MacLeod, who, of course, scored his first of the year. Oh my God, I'm just realizing how many people got their first of the year against the Avalanche this week. Oh, sweet Lord. The problem is, I think it happened at least once a game. The problem, actually, no,
it's just like last year.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
Okay, wait, we have to pause for a second because for those of you who weren't listening to us in season 1, first of all, you should go back and listen. It was great. And you can listen to us flub through our mistakes and our development over time and see how much we have or haven't improved. Up to you to decide. But also, this is a legitimate theme, and I'm very intrigued if anyone can figure out why it happens that so many different players have gotten their first, or teams have gotten their first, whatever it is, first goal, first point, break a losing streak, what have you against the Avs. Like, I don't know why it's happening, but Corey, I've definitely heard you say this before, and it's happening again. Why?
I don't know. Even when the Avalanche are quite literally the most dominant team in the NHL, they just can't help it. They just love to spread the love to different teams and give people their firsts, I suppose. I guess as long as people aren't losing their virginity on the ice and giving that first on the Avalanche, then I think we're okay. It is what it is. The problem with
what it is.
The problem with this goal is not that it was Kyle MacLeod's first of the year. It's that an Islanders stick ends up in the pad of Mackenzie Blackwood and prevents him from being able to stand up and defend the net crease. The Avs challenge, and I already knew it wasn't going to go in our favor. Not because I didn't believe that this wasn't goaltender interference, but literally none of our challenge calls have been going in our favor this year. I'll let you all know once I find that stat. Spoiler alert, the Avs lost the challenge. The league later called that contact incidental, as the Islanders player was attempting to make a play for the puck, and it therefore isn't goalie interference. What is that not? Every instance of goalie interference? Very rarely do you see a goalie interference play and state that the player who interfered with the goalie was trying to do so on purpose per se, but was instead trying to go after the puck to put it in, and therefore inciting incidental contact with the goaltender. But regardless, that's still goaltender interference because your actions within the crease made it so the goalie did not have an adequate chance or ability to defend the puck. This explanation makes no sense. Every player is going after the puck in this sequence, but one's stick gets stuck in Mackenzie's Blackwood pad through the player's actions, which prevents him from standing. Doesn't matter what I think. The Avs kill off the power play against a 29th ranked Islanders unit. Remember that for later. However, the Islanders pull on the Avs what the Avs have been doing to everyone else, and they double up their lead late by putting the Avs in an incredibly unfamiliar position, being down 2-0 going into intermission. But the Islanders, they were fast and aggressive on the puck and just winning battles. Kiviranta, though, was a noticeable player for me in this game, as his notable puck hound and nature has reemerged ever since he's returned, and was one of the few Avs players able to win some of the one-on-one wall battles with the Isles. In fact, the fourth line had a few of the Avalanche's best chances in the first. Then,
before you continue, sorry, because we're at a natural intermission, if you will.
We are. That's where my paragraph break was.
For all the things we've said, and yes, you can be upset with the refs, you can disagree with the refs. It's always going to happen. But the one thing I do have a problem with is the referees, the NHL, even as an entity with even the Toronto, able to intervene, right? They don't understand what goaltender interference is. If the NHL and its referees do not understand what actually constitutes goaltender interference, I mean, why is it even a rule at this point? If it's not going to get called in the right times and absolutely be called sometimes when it shouldn't be, why even bother calling it a rule at this point? You could call something else. You could just call standard interference if you can tell someone's intentionally going into the goaltender. So, I mean, it needs to be fixed. I don't know how you fix it. I don't know how you do that. But when there are new rules in other leagues, we've seen it in the NFL where referees are all brought together to be trained for all the units that are going to be around on the rule. And you see them emphasize it in the first early weeks of the season where they are looking for it and they are calling it as consistently as they can until everyone gets the message on what the rule is. And so then everyone understands. And it's still human beings. It's still a flawed system, but they need to do something about this because goaltender interference, it is the one issue. Like anything else that's subjective, fine. It's going to be bound to happen in reffing. But a play like that needs to be more clearly defined or more consistently officiated because otherwise it's just not fair to anybody. And why bother having it as a rule at all?
I'll tell you what, it's a very easy problem to fix. Here's how you fix this. First and foremost, the actual writing on the rule is too loose. It's too open for interpretation, and it leads to constant inconsistencies in this being called. The second thing is Connor Hellebuck, I think somebody who I would say knows quite a bit about goaltenders and goaltender interference, wrote an entire fucking research paper for the NHL on what goaltender interference is from a goalie's perspective and exactly how to define it. Has the league done anything with that? No. And it's such a fixable problem in my mind. Look, it's so simple. Maybe listen to the dudes who play the position. I'm pretty sure that they probably know it the best and can tell you what goaltender interference actually means. I would believe what Connor Hellebuck has to say. And yet we just have a bunch of Dorcases up in the high castle who just refuse to ever change. So it's a fixable problem. It's a very fixable problem. It's just the refusal to do it.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think also simplifying it where it's just like if you are in the blue paint and you touch the goaltender with a pinky and your toe is in the paint, that's all it takes. Call it, stay out of the fucking paint. If you touch the goalie and your feet aren't in the paint, I'm fine. Don't call it. That to me seems like a very easy way where the paint's there for a reason. And then I think they need to clean up the nuance. And if a player is checked into the blue paint by their own team, that I think there's some loose issues there about what constitutes that. But if they could hammer down on that one a little bit more clearly, that would help solve it as well. Because I think that there's too much gray area in what is determined as being caused by the defending team versus the actual offending player in the paint.
I'll tell you who's offended. Me. I'm offended because it was dumb. All right. Then the second period happened and 5 goals were scored. But the order is what matters here because before the Avalanche scored any, the Islanders scored 2 more to make it 4-0. The Avalanche have barely ever trailed by 1, let alone 2, let alone be down 4-0. Hell, they hardly ever trail. Even when they lost to the Bruins, it was still a tightly contested game, but they were just simply getting beat today. My overall feelings, skipping ahead a bit, is that I didn't think that the Avalanche played poorly by any stretch of the imagination. I know they let in 4 unanswered, but the Avalanche didn't they didn't look bad. What the fuck was I trying to say there? Wow, good job, past Corey. This dude doesn't know how to type anything. They didn't look bad like they have in some games. The Islanders simply looked like the better team. Every pass they were making was connecting, and they were dominating in the neutral zone and possession, and were just able to string shifts and chances together, and they got rewarded for it. But I also felt like the Avalanche were never out of it either because they weren't. Or because they weren't playing poorly, and because I knew they had the skill and the ability to make these comebacks. 5-0, forget it. But we've had the conversation here before where a 4-goal gap is actually a much more surmountable comeback than a 5-goal one. And on the whole, this is not an unfamiliar place for the Avalanche to come back from. And they did start with 2 quick goals from Val Nichushkin and Martin Necas, and they even almost had a third as they tried to swing the momentum back in their favor. Jared Bednar was mixing it up a bit and was working, and it was working to a degree, but the Islanders, they stayed even keeled, structured, and just continued to hammer shots on Colorado and its net. It was so intense that the Isles even scored on the power play. This is when it seemed a lot harder and was more frustrating because this power play goal for the Islanders came at the end of the period as well, and the Avs scored nearly right out of the gate in the third off of a great effort play by Arturi Lehkonen. Had the score been 4-3 at that point, we could have been staring down the barrel of a very different game, but even then, that's ignoring the fact that the Avalanche allowed 4 unanswered goals prior to even scoring themselves. But the Islanders, they simply locked it down from there. They dominated in the face-off dot, and then when it came down to the final few minutes where the Avalanche had a power play and a 6-on-4, they still couldn't score. It was curtains at that point. I'll fully acknowledge that at this point, this power play for the Avs is becoming a sore spot for me as well, and just like every single analyst and commentator is saying, it simply doesn't make sense. The Avalanche power play is structured very similarly to the Oilers, two absolutely dynamite forwards who score goals for breakfast, quarterbacked by an offensively minded defenseman, means the goals should be raining from the sky. They are for the Oilers. They are for the Stars. Why aren't they for the Avalanche? I'm stating that because I don't have the answer, and at this point, it feels like no one does. We won't dwell on that right now because I don't want to talk about the power play. Anyways, this game gets a bit more of a highlight because of the fact that the Avalanche finally lost again. And I frankly have to commend the Islanders because they played a really solid game. The use of injection into this team has revitalized its playing ability. They're fast, they're tenacious, and they have the drive to win. I'm not quite sure where they will be come season's end, but it would not at all surprise me to see them in an Eastern playoff spot. They're not world beaters yet, but they have a bright future spearheaded by the equally tenacious and aggressive Patrick Waugh. Well done, Long Island. I look forward to our games next year.
Yeah, and while we're talking about the Islanders, I think they've really been impressive this year. They're legitimately in the playoff hunt in a very competitive East, and so I think it's fair to give them their flowers and props to them. And you mentioned the name earlier, but especially for Kyle Palmieri, who I don't remember if we talked about this last week or if it happened in the past week because it's just work is, as you know, Corey has had me super busy. I just can't remember, but I feel like you must have seen the play, and if we already highlighted this last episode, I'm sorry, but I'm going to highlight it again because man tears his ACL and gets back up, and when he's skating back to the bench, which, I mean, put it in the terms for any of you who are like me and watch football, and they bring out the cart, and you don't see these players ever walk on it. Man gets back up on his feet, and he's skating back to the bench. He steals the puck, passes it over, and gets the assist on the goal for his team as he's being helped down the tunnel. Like, if we just needed, not that we needed one because we've already got so many and it's just the best sport ever, but hockey, these players are so fucking tough and they deserve so much more respect than they get. I really hope he heals well. It's very unfortunate, obviously, at least a 6-month injury, if not more. So he's probably done for the year. I would be surprised if he wasn't, but I just think I wanted to put that out there. It's just the respect for him as a veteran player, also having that injury happen. I think he's 34 now. That's going to be a hard rehab. And so just want to send our best to him and to his family and give that support and recognition to the organization in Long Island for bouncing back and continuing to play well, even in his absence.
Yeah, they did say he was done. And I mean, the play is so interesting because you watch it and it's one of those like nothing burger plays. Like he's just kind of delivering a hit to a player and then he just crumples to the floor. And that's when you know something like that has happened. My mom, physical therapist, did state that if he was standing, which obviously he did and skated himself off, that he didn't have a full tear at the time. Otherwise, he would not have been able to stand up on his own. So he didn't fully tear it, but he did tear it as stated in the medical release after the fact. But yeah, I mean, it shows the grit of these athletes, which is so funny to me when old heads say, hockey isn't as tough as it used to be. A bunch of sissies skating around out there. And then you see stuff like that. Like, yeah, we're not throwing flying elbows anymore, old man. But these players have not lost an ounce of toughness in how they play the game and how they conduct themselves on the ice. So, yeah, Kyle Palmieri, absolute veteran beast out there. So hoping that recovery is speedy, smooth, and goes well because leg injuries for hockey players are never great.
Yeah, never great, especially not an ACL. But I don't want to throw off your rhythm, so you can keep on rolling. Just wanted to make sure we gave him some props and some support.
Well deserved recognition for sure. All right, the Rangers and the power of high sticks and Igor. I am fairly convinced that the rest of the New York Rangers fucking hate Igor Shesterkin. Because it seems like they just do not care that the man puts in superhuman efforts for a dead dry home offense and a non-existent defense. Perhaps they are just jealous and are left wondering why the rest of the team can't play as amazing as Igor. I understand that Igor's heroics are kind of expected at this point, but he is genuinely the reason that they are in most of their games, particularly this one against the Avs. I know the Rangers still ultimately lost this game, but I would still be giving the guy a goalie hug and say, quote, thanks for keeping us in the game and giving us a chance to get or to even get to overtime against the current best team in the league, close quote, because Igor faced 42 shots on the night, and he saved 39 of them. The only ones that got past him were a crazy Parker Kelly deflection from his knees, Nathan MacKinnon batting a puck out of the air, and then Nathan MacKinnon again having to channel all of his superhuman abilities and the spirit of Sidney Crosby to win it for the Avalanche in overtime. Any normal shot that would be a lesser, or any normal shot that would be a lesser goalie, or that would beat a lesser goalie, is never going to get past Shesty. If you needed a goalie for Team Earth, he is up there as one of my top choices. But Shesty just deserves some more love, and my God, he has earned that highest paid goalie title. He is the Rangers' most consistent player, whether this team is fucking ass or conference finals bound. He is steadfast and seldom the reason that they lose any given night. He certainly was not the reason tonight, as he had a .929 save percentage in a losing effort. But I genuinely just wanted to highlight him because I think the guy deserves more than just some credit, and he deserves some love from the fuck-ass team that he plays for. I'm sure Rangers fans adore this guy, and they should, but the players should be buying him steak dinners on a nightly basis.
And with, I know the Rangers have bounced back some, and I think they
got shut out tonight.
So well, of course they did. Of course I say that, and that's what happened. I'm back to being the Rangers. But they are still in the playoff conversation, like everybody in the East. And I think the majority of the credit needs to go to Shesty because they have been shut out more than I think any other team in the league this year. I'm saying that offhand. I have no way to verify it at this exact moment, but it feels accurate with the number of times they were shut out at home alone. So also unintentional reference there, but it's Christmas season. So, if you haven't watched Home Alone already, go do that and get your creative juices flowing on how to stop intruders in your house. Anyways, I do think, like you said, he's definitely one of the top 5 goaltenders in the league, if not the top one on any given night. And if anybody who thinks differently, I think there's a reasonable competition or a tier that he is certainly the captain of, if you will.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out right now. Not because, see, it's giving me how many shutouts does each team have this year? Like, no, I'm not trying to see who's shutting out. I want to see who's been shut out. I can still tell you here real quickly. Let's go to New York Rangers. Okay. Team game log. All right. So they were shut out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I believe, tonight would be 6. They have been shut out 6 times so far this season.
Yikes. So, yeah. And I mean, we're roughly, let's call it 30 games into the season. They might have played a few more, but that's literally 20% of the season that the Rangers have been shut out. That's bad.
That is not good. That is not good. Oh, boy. So, yeah, Shesty's doing his job. He's just, excuse me. And I mean, it's never like by a super wide margin usually. Like tonight, it was just 3-0. Like that's not an insurmountable comeback there. But still shut out. So Shesty's probably standing on his head every night, and they're just like, oh yeah, fuck that goalie guy. He's doing his job. It's you know how the New York Rangers treat Igor Shesterkin? They treat him like the people who go into fast food places and who will sit down and then leave all their trash on the table. And they'll be like, well, it's someone's job to clean it up. I don't have to pick it up and put it away. Same mentality there. They're like, well, I don't need to be thankful for my goaltender. That's his job. He's supposed to be amazing night in and night out.
I think always thank your goalie. I don't remember I think you were the one who sent me the video, but when at the end of the game, like 45 seconds of like goalie hugs and head taps. And I think it's one of the best cultures. I've also seen something for those of you who are new fans to the game. I've seen people post about it on social media where they're like, I did not realize they do this thing, but isn't it the most adorable ever? And it is, because goalies, they're unique, they're weird, they're the odd kid in the back of the class doing God knows what, but they're also the sweet little teddy bear who just wants a pat on the head sometimes. So, you know, I think it's just fitting with all of the uniqueness that goaltenders have. They deserve their love at the end of the game. And any team, regardless of if they have a 929 save percentage in a game or they're Shesty and they're the highest paid in the league, I think teams should be buying their goalie steak dinners more frequently anyway.
Dude, I want hugs and head pats, and I'm not even a goaltender, so I can't imagine how the guys who are the only people standing out there for all 60 minutes feel. So, yeah, I'm with you. Now, at some point,
I mean, they stare down. Sorry, that
go
last
ahead.
thing. They stare down and have a little puck. We've talked about it before. Get shot at their face. Not just that they're standing there for 60 minutes, but they're having a little missile fired at them over and over for 60 minutes. Least you can do after they get hit by that thing at 20 to 30 times, you can give them a little pat on the head. Sorry,
I agree. You have to be a special kind of crazy to stand in front of basically a rubber bullet every game. So, yeah, you're very right. Now, at some point, I plan to make a segment about teams that aren't rivals of the Avalanche, but sure as hell play like they are. And the Rangers are in contention for the very top of that list. There is truly not a single game that these two teams have played in the last long while that hasn't been as close and as tightly played as it can be. And they only see each other twice a year. But you can always expect an exciting night of hockey when these two teams play each other. It can be hard to see a game with a score of 0-0 and say that game is exciting. And a good majority of the time, it indicates, strong defensive play, limited chances, and not a lot of shots getting through to the net. So really something boring. This was not the case in the Avalanche Rangers game, as there were a total of 20 shots between the two clubs at the conclusion of a 0-0 first period. The excitement from these kind of games comes from the dueling dragons' kind of nature to them. There is offense being generated, but the chances aren't quality, or the goalies are simply locked in. It then leads us, the viewers, the fans, to ask ourselves, when will the dam break and how? Who will be the team to finally break through and get that first goal? Will that first goal be all that it takes, or will it lead to a cascade of scoring? In the case of the Avalanche versus the Rangers in MSG, it was neither of these options. Instead, the game ended up being tied 2 more times after the 0-0 start. The Avs scored and held, and then the first goal of the year, of course, by Connor Sherry on a broken breakaway ties it. And then it's an offensive stalemate all over again, where each team fights hard to break the tie, but no one will yield until an unlikely puck flies up in the air where the best player in the world hand-eyes it out of the air. It reminded me very much of the goal that Nathan MacKinnon had against New Jersey a season ago. A goal ago. But then the intensity gets ratcheted up even more as the Rangers pull their goalie, and you had to know, tie it up with less than a minute to go off of a controversial high-stick play by Artemi Panarin. I don't really know what to make of this, because for those who don't know, you play a puck with a high stick, i.e. whack it out of the air above your shoulders or at head level of another player, the play is blown dead. That is what seemed to be the case with Panarin, as you can see his stick nearly collide with the head of 6'1" Yoel Kiviranta as he bats the puck in the air with a high stick twice before blasting it past Blackwood. But the automatic lead review allowed the goal to stand. As we mentioned during the Islanders segment, the Avs have been shafted all year with calls. I'd say something has to go their way eventually, but it's hard to say that things aren't going their way. But it was clearly all a play for the Avalanche to pick up their second OT win of the year and have Nathan MacKinnon score the nastiest backhand you will see all year. It was so nasty that Igor Shesterkin broke his damn neck thinking the puck flew over the goal and behind him into the netting. Little did he know it was in the back of the goal crease. Game over. It was so nasty that when Josh Manson was asked about Nate after the game, he said that exact thing. Quote, "Oh my God, he's nasty," close quote. Truly was an all-time play by an all-time player. Nathan MacKinnon is quickly cementing himself as the greatest Avalanche forward of all time. He just needs a few more things to truly cement himself. And a second Stanley Cup would certainly be a good starting point.
Yeah, I mean, any Stanley Cup, especially when you're stacking them and it's multiple, is always a great way to cement yourself. I mean, I I don't think it should take that though. I mean, with the season that Nate is putting up with the number of goals, I mean, he's just running away at the front of the league with points this year. Uh, I mean, I think the Stanley Cup should be considered the cherry on the cake for him, personally. And I'm not even the Avalanche fan. I'm not the homer here. Yes, I've been in Colorado a long time and have definitely adopted the Avalanche as a second team in some sense. And I'm always very happy rooting for the best for them and their players. But from an honest perspective of a fan of a different franchise, I think MacKinnon is already put himself in that conversation and reasonably should be at the front of that considering his age and how many more years he has to play. If this is his best season to date, there's no sign of it going downhill or stopping, so it should only continue upward from here.
Yeah, I certainly feel very grateful that I get to watch him night in and night out. And I mean, if you're not watching the Avalanche, even if you were a non-Avalanche fan, I kind of feel bad for you because the Avalanche are just fun to watch night in and night out. Whether win or lose, they're just a fun team to watch. Now then.
I agree. They really are fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. And the Sharks are already getting to that point. They're fun to watch, even if they're not always winning. So pretty grateful for that. For you. Grateful for you and grateful that the Sharks are not sucky to watch anymore.
Amen to that. But I won't distract you more because I don't get me started on the Sharks.
I know. We'll get there. The Flyers and the power of Travis Konecny. The reason the title of this specific section highlights specifically Travis Konecny is because the man had 8 shots in this game. He finally scored on one of them to bring the Flyers within one and up their intensity tenfold. The next closest Flyer in terms of shooting were Christian Dvorak and Nick Seeler, who each had 3. Even Nathan MacKinnon, arguably the most prolific shooter of this era, only mustered 6 shots. But this game against Philadelphia reminded me of exactly how I spoke on their games last year, and that they played out in a very similar way, except that Philadelphia is even better this year, which is great for them. Not great for their opponents, but I'd like to pull some excerpts from my Flyers analysis last season and compare it to this season's game. From the game against the Flyers on February 2nd, 2025, I wrote, quote, "A no-quit heavy attitude. The Flyers don't quit. They did a great job keeping the Avs to only 2 goals as they, same as the first time these teams met, sold out and made blocks, got in lanes, and were simply in the way of the Avs. They puck hunted and made it a point to hit everything that moves, especially Cale Makar. When crunch time comes down to it in the third, they have a great ability to steal momentum from teams and push back against their opponents. They are incredibly persistent and are not afraid to push back. When the going gets tough, the Flyers get going," close quote. The first time they met, I was still figuring out how to write about Avalanche hockey, and a skill I arguably still do not have now. Funnily enough, though, the first time these two teams played last season, just like now, the Avalanche also won 3-2, but in a very different fashion than in this contest. Okay. In the original contest, it was different to how they won 3-2 than they did today. I'm done. It was different. They won 3-2 both times, but it was different. Well, the whole idea here is I want to pay respect to the Flyers, who played a fantastically excellent game and pushed back incredibly hard in the third. The Avalanche defense had done a good job keeping them out of their zone and away from Mackenzie Blackwood, who was on the back half of back-to-back starts, mind you. But when the third period came around, the Flyers were unrelenting and basically forced shots and chances through by any means necessary. It got so intense that the Avalanche mistakenly conceded a penalty shot. So no Flyer got their first goal of this game, but it was the first penalty shot that the Avalanche gave away this year to the NHL's premier shootout specialist, Trevor Zegras. I'm not even kidding. He is a ridiculous 17 for 25 on his attempts. He, quite simply, does not miss when he is one-on-one with a goaltender. At this point, I was mentally prepared for this game to be tied. I could already see the overtime in my head as the Avs tried valiantly to capture 2 wins in back-to-back games, which both went to overtime. But that isn't what happened. Trevor Zegras fluttered in slowly and suddenly tried to quickly release a shot that deflected off the front of Mackenzie Blackwood, and the score remained 3-2. The Avalanche at that point and until the final horn, or 3-2 Avalanche at that point until the final horn. But the Flyers made that task an incredibly arduous one. With their goalie pulled, it was everything the Avalanche and Blackwood could do to keep the puck out of the net, especially when the aforementioned Konechny was on the ice. Also, for whatever reason, the Avalanche just have not been able to hit the empty net this season. Most of the time, they're the ones ahead trying to defend their lead, and there have been a few games that have ended up a bit closer as of late, but they're just struggling to get the puck out of their zone 6-on-5, and when they do, they can only manage to ice it for a moment of reprieve, but being forced to keep the same unit on the ice. For all this team's strengths, and there are many, this is one of the few knocks that I hope they can improve on as the season goes on.
I mean, it's a reasonable knock, especially if you expect the team to be playing with a lead late in the game. As the season goes on, or when you get to the playoffs, those opponents are going to get tougher. And those games are going to mean more and more if it's still in the regular season. So you got to be able to hold on to those leads. You don't expect to be winning in a blowout. So I do think that's a reasonable concern to have, or an area of emphasis looking in the long term, considering when the Avalanche are as good or have been playing as well as they have, it might be hard to find areas for improvement sometimes. So I would agree with that finding on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it feels, and I say it a little bit here coming up, but it feels like when the Avalanche have anything but 5 versus 5 on the ice, it's just a struggle, whether it's to their advantage or not. It's so silly, because you'd feel like if you have more guys, it should be easier to score, but no, that is not the case.
Yeah, and I think that's not the first time we've seen it, and I'm not going to spoil anything from my segment, but there's a certain scenario that the Sharks are kind of worst in the league at in a weird way. So I feel you there.
Yep. Well, Dom, I know you liked the Complaint Corner segment, and I guess in a way, this kind of upcoming segment is a Complaint Corner. You can treat it that way, because pretty much I'm just going to bitch and complain for the next few minutes, everybody. So without further ado, the Predators and the power of the shootout.
Boo! You stink!
I knew it. I knew this is exactly what was going to happen. I knew that the longer this game stayed tied, the more likely it was that the Predators were going to break that tie, which is so counter to everything that the Avalanche have been doing this year. But I am telling you, whether you believe me or not, I can feel hockey events in my bones. I know what's going to happen before it even happens, but UC Saros was dialed beyond compare, even more so than Igor, it seemed, because as the game went on, the Avalanche's offense only grew heavier and UC just grew stronger. Therefore, I hate him. What I did not account for was Cale Makar tying the game with 8 seconds left and forcing OT to at least keep the Avalanche from their 3rd regulation loss and 2 regulation losses in a week. I about broke the sound barrier when he scored this goal. I genuinely couldn't believe it. What I could believe was that the Avalanche weren't able to close it out in overtime. They did dominate possession, and they had a good degree of looks at Saros in the 3-on-3, but all for naught. That being said, the Predators weren't able to end it either, and Scott Wedgwood had to come up with a couple dynamite saves of his own against some of the Predators' youth. But Corey, I hear you asking, what about the rest of this game? Why are you really only highlighting the end of it? Because, dear listeners, whether you be friend or adversarial fan, I want to bitch about the shootout. A thing that I used to dote over as a young hockey fan before understanding how unbelievably fucking bullshit it is. I hate the shootout, and you should too. It is the utterly lamest way to decide the outcome of a hockey game, the ultimate team sport. Someone really sat down and said, I have a plan. Instead of a longer OT duration, or perhaps another brief intermission between a second 5-minute 3-on-3, or even letting the game end in a tie, let's remove every part of the team aspect and just have the skaters go one-on-one with the goaltender in a Wild West shootout. I'm not just screaming about this because my team lost. I'm screaming a little louder because we lost and we fucking suck in the shootout. But I'm screaming because it doesn't make sense why the shootout is still even here. Not to mention Scott Wedgwood got a possible concussion from it. But you go and find me a single player who actually likes the shootout. And if there is an NHL player who doesn't mind it, then they are in the minority because the majority of the NHL hates it, as proven via previous player polls. I understand. Unlike playoffs, games cannot go on infinitely, especially if there is a back-to-back the next day. But there has to be a better solution than this for the regular season. As I already mentioned, hockey is the ultimate team sport, and goals are scored in the heat of the moment, off the rush, on a cycle of extended zone pressure, off of a turnover or a rebound. The closest thing you could equate the shootout to is a one-on-one breakaway opportunity, but even that isn't the same, as it all happens at game speed. Shootouts do not function at game speed and essentially exist counter to everything a hockey game is. If you don't agree with what I'm saying about shootouts, if you like them, that's fine. But I'm making it abundantly clear that I do not, nor will I ever. The Avs fall in a shootout to the worst team in the Central with a chance for revenge at home this Saturday. That'll be interesting. Tune in.
Oh, so not only is it complaint corner, but it is my favorite thing to complain about because, I mean, I've already complained about it enough, so I won't drag this out longer than it needs to be. Shootout, stupid. If there's any player who likes it, probably Trevor Zegras, who, gotta respect it. He actually looks like the prospect that was promised now that he's with Philly. So I want to say Anaheim probably fucked that up, and good for him to be in a system that he is functioning in, regardless of the shootout. But if anybody likes it, probably him, based on the stats you listed earlier. Like 17 of 25 is ridiculous. And watching him take shootouts, he's just so nonchalant about it. So it's annoying. But wholeheartedly agree. I think the shootout is annoying. I think we need ties again. And if after overtime it's tied, then it's a tie. And both teams take 1 point. Deal with it. If we have to have 4 things instead of 3, deal with it. You know? Or maybe we get rid of the OT loss and it's just a tie. And if you lose an OT, it just goes in the loss column. I don't fucking know the answer. I've perseverated on this. Yes, we're bringing that word back. I've talked about it at length. I've brainstormed in other episodes. If you haven't heard me, go find one of them. I fucking hate the shootout, man. I hate the 3-on-3 overtime. Give me 10 minutes of 5-on-5. And if it's still tied and you need to call it because of a back-to-back or whatever else, just call it a fucking draw. Call it what it is. Don't settle it in the most awkward and boring way. Like, I get it. You're trying to, I do get it. You're trying to reward the home fans or just the fans in general who stay for the game and stay for the whole time and aren't leaving early and being lame. But, I don't know, man. Like, other sports end in ties. It happens. Football ends in a tie if after 10 minutes of overtime, they still can't settle it. Soccer ends in a tie. Like, unless you are in the knockout stage like the playoffs where we in hockey played through the end anyway, ties are possible. Like, I feel like every other sport, there is still an outcome after an overtime where there can be a tie. So I think personally, I might have less random awe or just appeal to certain fans, right? Just some little pizzazz at the end of a game. But I'm with you, Corey. I fucking hate it. So, please drop us in the comments what you think the solution is. Send us something out to our email or tell us how we're both just idiots hating because shootouts suck.
Yeah, we're just S-tier haters, I guess. Last thought. Dallas is right there. Literally a game win away. You cannot afford to leave any points on the table now. The Stars are winning right now. Whether they deserve to win some of the games or not, they are winning. Even a historic season with 2 regulation losses cannot keep the Stars at bay. Play your best hockey every night and keep winning until they start losing again. And when they're losing, keep winning. You will see this team again, and you have to be fully prepared to destroy them.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, really quickly. It's crazy that Dallas is also now at 21 wins in the season, same number of wins as the Avalanche. So we're not saying this just to say it. We're not hating to hate. I mean, they are both just way ahead of everyone else in the league right now, but I do think this is a rare scenario where if you're Colorado, screw any fucking perceived curse for winning and being the best team in the league, because you fucking need to. Because you're going to see this team in the second round of the playoffs, and you better have home ice in Game 7 because you know it's going to go to Game 7. Like, we were talking about how dominant this Avalanche team is, and they could try to replicate when they went 16-4 in the playoffs a few years ago. I think they could go 16-3 with all 3 losses coming to force a Game 7 against Dallas in the second round, because I think they could fuck up anybody else in the league. But that team is... They've woken up after their slow start. They're right there. They're lurking, like you said. So I hope the Avalanche bounce back from this most recent loss, and from the one to the Isles as well, and get back into the groove a little bit. I hope Wedgwood is okay. I know you mentioned there was possibly a concussion, so I hope that there's, first of all, not a concussion, but if there is, that he recovers fully and quickly from that to be back in net, because he's really been having a stellar season. I'd hate to see that go off.
Yeah, fucking Philip Forsberg, who did like stop and say sorry, just ran into him on a shootout. Like, what are you needing to do that you truck our goaltender? Like, it's so unnecessary.
Add that to the list of reasons.
What kind of move are you needing to pull that you need to run straight and square and hard into Scott Wedgwood? It was very upsetting to watch. And I mean, had Gabe Landeskog scored the next shootout goal to tie it up, because of course Ryan O'Reilly scored on his first shot and nobody else scored after that. If Gabe Landeskog had scored, then Mackenzie Blackwood would have had to step in to try and, make saves in the continued shootout. It was cooked from that point on, but whatever. It's another OT loss. It isn't a regulation loss. It's a point. Whatever, we'll take it. But Tom, this week, it seemed to be the week of 4-1 scoring, for better or for worse. The Sharks are no longer a bad team, but they are not quite a great team yet. They can have great games against great teams, and they can have bad games against bad teams, or they can just have games against teams. The rebuild is coming to an end, but there is still more work to do. But the best part, at the very least, is that you aren't questioning if the Sharks will make it to 20 wins this year. It's time for In the Tank with Dom.
Well, thank you for that lovely intro, Corey. And I love that last statement, because you're fucking right. I'm not questioning if we'll make it to 20 wins this year. I said my prediction at the season. I started by saying 25, and then I said, fuck it, let's go for 30. And I believe the Sharks can get 30 wins this year. And I think that's the aim at a minimum, which I'm really happy to say. There is a lot of progress. And like you, I have tried to write segments in the terms of power. And let's rewind. And for those of you who haven't heard our previous episode, first of all, go listen to it. But here is the Capitals and the power to make me crash out. Because on Wednesday last week, on the 3rd of December, when we were recording, I was also listening and somewhat watching as the Washington Capitals absolutely pummeled the ever-loving shit out of the Sharks. I mean, it was already 4-0 after the first period. I mean, like I said, for those who haven't heard our previous episode, it was fun. You should go listen. But you also missed out on just hearing me actually crash out in live time with my misery as the Capitals destroyed the Sharks. It was so bad that I actually feel like it was worse than the loss against the Avalanche, because the Caps scored 4 goals on 12 shots that just forced Askarov out of the game after 17 minutes. At least he made it into the second period against the Avalanche and was screened on a couple of those. They weren't his fault, but not a pretty game from Askey here. And again, I think it's partially the opponent, not all on him, but just a hint for the theme later on, but the last of those 4 goals for Washington in the first period was a shorthanded one on the Sharks power play, which is just incredibly frustrating. And it will be a focus of my In the Tank ramblings here. But I think that's more than anything why Askarov was pulled, because you can't be allowing that one up. You got to be the guy to bail out your team, especially when your team does this far too often. And I got to say, Ned was admirable in his substitution, but he still conceded 3 goals on 19 shots faced. The Caps were up 7-0. 7-0. And I said it last episode. I said it just now. It felt very similar to that game against the Avalanche, whereas MacLeod said the Sharks got waxed. The difference was this time they were at home, and it felt worse. I mean, thankfully, we didn't get shut out in this one. We didn't get blanked. So maybe I have to retract that thought of it being worse. I don't know. That's a toss-up for me. It's still a 6-goal loss.
No, I think it's worse.
Okay, cool. It's not just me. I guess the one saving grace, go Pavel Regenda, because his second game in a row being called up from the AHL team, and he scored again with a power play goal again. So 2 starts for Regenda with the NHL squad, 2 goals. I just want to say, I think that's pretty cool. Good for the man. I think I feel like I mentioned his name at the end of preseason, thought he might have been able to steal a spot. Also called him Regenda at the time, so apologies for that mispronunciation of his name to anyone out there who cares, especially the man himself. But, you know, I want to give him his flowers, because for a guy like that who's getting the chance to play at the NHL level, I don't think it was great to see him not give up and actually take advantage of that opportunity. I think he deserves the chance to be called up more in the future, potentially, or be, I mean, there's so much talent in the Sharks pipeline. I don't know if they can keep him long term, because those type of AHL guys who have a really good season, it's easy to poach them. But I do hope the Sharks are able to keep him around when all is said and done, and that we can see him in the teal for the San Jose primary, not the San Jose Barracuda. That would be awesome in my opinion. But other than that, I kind of didn't want to talk about this. Said that last week.
I was going to say,
and the only thing I do want to highlight here, and the only reason I went through this and double checked everything, is because I got to give credit. Ovi was awesome. He had 2 goals in what was possibly his final game played in the tank, if he should elect to retire after this season. So I just, that's the reason I went back to this one, is just because the man is awesome. He's going and he's just setting the record as high as he can, and he deserves that respect. And if it was his last game, I'd hate to have skipped right over it. So that's the only other thing. The Capitals and the power of Alex Ovechkin as well. But moving on, because I don't want to spend any more time on that one. Stars.
Hold on. I have a totally unrelated question that I've been thinking about for a little while. Because I saw his name come across my radar, and I just was kind of thinking about it. Where's Michael Misa? Where's he been? Is he okay? Where is Michael Misa?
So Michael Misa went on injured reserve back in October, I want to say, or early November.
Okay.
They just in the past week or two, I'll say the last 10 days, because I can't give you the exact date offhand. They moved him to long-term injured reserve, so retroactively, so they can get, based on how long he's been out, that it wouldn't cost them anything, right? Only get them money back towards the cap later on. Not that he costs a lot anyway. He was just recently, a few days ago, loaned on a conditioning stint to the Barracuda, and he had his first start for the Barracuda in the past week. That much I am confident about, knowing that happened. So he's on the mend and should be making his way back soon. He also was on the list for the Canada World Juniors roster, so expected to be loaned for that tournament as well in 2026 to get more experience there. So he's on the mend. Unclear if the Sharks are planning to have him play through to 10 games this year, or maybe give him a red shirt, but we'll see as that progresses. Maybe I'll have more updates for you. There's not been a ton of news on the injury front, but he is finally working his way back after a long absence.
Yes, that was the reason I asked, is because I saw that he was on that World Juniors list, and I didn't necessarily know the consequences of, like, is he still in the NHL right now? Did they send him back down? Is he still injured? So thank you for the Michael Misa update, Tom. I was just curious about where he was.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other one on that list too, who's expected to be potentially loaned, I believe, is Sam Dickinson, is on a World Juniors roster list as well. So we'll see what the Sharks do there, since they've been keeping him at the NHL level, and he's been, he's developing. He's not necessarily where they want him to be yet, but you see the flashes of what can be as he gets better. And I think experience in any form is important for Sam. And the Sharks also have like too many defensemen. So if he was at the World Juniors, I do think they would be fine depth chart wise. Although again, I'm just in my brain debating what is the better experience for Dickinson.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway, on to the next game, the one that Corey, you and I both really, really wanted the Sharks to win, and it's the Stars and the not so powerful power play. What do I say about this one? Well, I missed part of this game because A, I forgot that it was in Dallas, so Central Time instead of Mountain Time. And B, I was at my office until almost 7 p.m. on a Friday night. So not ideal, but you know, we do good job at our work. So I missed a good chunk of this game. So before, I'll give the cliff notes, and then Corey, if anything you wanted to add, moments that you feel are worth highlighting, please, I will cue you to jump in. Because like you said, final score of this one was 4-1. I'm not going to spoil it yet. I'll get through it here quickly. The Sharks really escaped the first period down just 1-0 on a Jason Robertson power play goal for the Stars. Askarov really, really stellar. I want to say it was a good bounce back game after the loss to the Capitals for Askey. I do like seeing him get the back-to-back starts and the chance to redeem himself and get his confidence back. I think I said that previously after his loss to the Avalanche, and I'm glad Warsofsky did the same thing here. Incredibly solid, though, through the first two periods and the first half of the third as well, where he only allowed that one goal in the first 50-plus minutes of the game. Colin Graf was the only player to score in the second period to have the game tied at 1-1 after two periods. So even though it wasn't an offensively pretty game from the Sharks, they still were hanging with Dallas, and whether or not they should have been, but they were there. And that, I think, is part of this team getting better. And like you said, Corey, they're playing bad against good teams or good against bad teams or just games against teams. This felt like a games against teams type of game because I didn't know from what I saw how to assess this, but the back half of the third, and the Stars are like the third best team in the third period. Like I know the the Avalanche are the best team in the third period with goals for. Pretty sure the Stars are ranked number 3 in the league on that list, whereas the Sharks are literally last in the league with goals for in the third period. Their goal differential in the third is atrocious. And that continued because it was all Dallas with 3 goals, including an empty netter, in less than 7 minutes of play during that third period. The Stars also benefited from a Macklin Celebrini 6-on-5 goal being called back on an offsides challenge. God, I hate those. I really do. Drew Remenda, half of our announcing team, said it. I do think there should be like a statute to limitations where if you are in the zone a minimum amount of time, the defense has had ample opportunity to get the puck and get a clear. So any delayed offsides, there should be a limitations on it. This one was less than 30 seconds, so I'm fine with it. But I think if you can have sustained zone time for, let's say, 60 or 90 seconds, it should not allow to be called back on an offsides challenge. That's my opinion. We can debate that here in a minute, or debate me in the comments. I'd love to have that debate. But what's important about this would-be goal was that had it stood for Celebrini, A, I would have been super happy on my Friday night, and B, the Sharks actually would have been down just 3-2 with 2:20 left in the game. Instead, the clock was wound back to the time of the offsides, and Miro Heiskanen was able to launch an empty net goal from nearly his own end line, at least 175 feet down the ice, to give Dallas the 4-1 lead with, guess how much time remaining? I don't actually want you to guess. It was 2:21.
Okay.
So Celebrini scored at 2:20, clock winds back, and it's 2:21. Sorry, Corey. I was just, it was frustrating to me that yes. Timing.
Yes.
Sorry. This game, from what I saw, was triggering because I missed the first half to 2/3 of this game, right, Corey? And that's where I'm going to have you jump in here. But when I did tune in and it's the third period and the Sharks played well in that first half, I got my hopes up. I was like, fuck yeah, we can beat this team. And then shit started to go wrong. But then Celebrini gets the goal 6-on-5. And I'm like, hey, we're still in this. So it was just roller coaster of emotions and a letdown at the end of the night.
The Stars are also incredibly good in the third period. They're pretty much on pace with the Avs for the most third period goals. I had to look because it was stated there. Some lady was like, they have the most. So I was like, bullshit, we had the most. And it's literally the same number. We're tied. And so the Stars are genuinely the most frustrating team, especially within the final 2 minutes of a period, as you've seen. Especially if you're ahead by 1 goal. The Stars have this immaculate and annoying ability to come back in the final, dying moments of a game. 6-on-5, just pressure, and you just can't get rid of these fuckers. Although at that point, it was already kind of too late. Although I do find it entertaining that you went back in time to score a goal. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool if
it wasn't the Stars that scored it.
Yeah. Somehow we went from being down 3-2 and we flash back a second in time and we're down 4-1. Yep.
Yeah, that's what is it in Back to the Future? 87 miles an hour. He fired that puck at 87 miles an hour and it went back in time.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably, actually. That's pretty funny. That's a good poll. I haven't watched that in a while. I have to confirm that.
I have admittedly never seen it all the way through, embarrassingly.
Well, I don't think that's embarrassing. I mean, old movies are sometimes hard to sit all the way through. I have no problem being the first to admit that.
I love movies from the 80s. That's like my prime material that me and my mom watch together. We watch 80s movies all the time. 80s movies rock. I disagree.
I think they are high quality. I just think they are sometimes, with our modern day and age and our short attention spans, can be hard to watch all the way through, start to finish. In a world of short form content and looking at things on our phones and ready access to way more stimulation than we need as humans, I just think it's harder to watch those movies these days, is more of what I was going to say. Because I agree with you. They are very quality. You just have to be patient and follow the whole story.
Sorry, what was that?
That is its own rant. That was its own rant that I can have a different time in a different forum because it honestly doesn't have anything to do with hockey. But getting back to the title of the segment, the not so powerful power play. I realize I haven't actually talked about why I went with that title for this game segment. And that's because, to quote the Sharks' wonderful announcing team, and I think this time it was from Randy Hahn, the man himself, the Sharks' power play has been dangerous in the wrong way. And he was absolutely on point with that assertion.
Hello? Stop! Oh, God!
Of them.
Everybody, we lost
plenty of head taps. No, I was in the zone. You lost me?
We did.
Where did you lose me?
Right as you started that statement.
Well,
why did you?
We're just going to rewind. Well, we're going to rewind and say, why is the segment called the not so powerful power play? And to quote the Sharks' wonderful announcing team, I believe this one was the man, the lead announcer, Randy Hahn. The Sharks' power play has been dangerous in the wrong way.
Oh.
And he was absolutely on point with that assertion because the Sharks had not one but 2 power plays in the first 5 minutes of the third period. And they were honestly extremely fortunate to not have allowed a goal on either of them. Extra head taps for Askarov are owed by this team because, Dallas should have scored not one but 2 shorthanded goals to start the third period. The reason they didn't is because they missed one on an open net where they had Askarov beat and he saved the other one. But the Sharks lead the league, at least at this point after this game, with 5 shorthanded goals allowed, which is definitely not a stat you want to be first in. And the Sharks have also allowed the NHL most shots and shot attempts against when on their own power play. So even though the power play has been better at points on offense this year, it has been a liability to some degree for the Sharks, where like the Avalanche, we are not good in special team situations. And I'm willing to say that. It's to the point where I sometimes wonder if we need to roll out, instead of 4 offense and 1 defense, or 4 forwards and 1 defenseman. I actually believe we need to consider having a full defensive pairing out there on our power play, because Also, Orlov has a powerful shot, and you don't have to choose between him and Klingberg for who's on the first unit. You just put them both out there. Dickinson is also incredibly offensively talented, so if you're telling me swap out a forward on the second unit and put in Dickinson, I think that's an okay idea. But the fact of the matter remains is they gave up a shorty to Washington, and they should have given up not one but two to Dallas, and are very fortunate not to have. So this is a serious problem. It's seriously so fucking frustrating to me, man. I get you. You lament your power play and why it doesn't work compared to the other top teams in the league. At least the Avalanche aren't leading the league in shorthanded goals allowed. I gotta say it. I can't even speak because it's so angering.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
And it also hurts their ability to be consistent. And I don't think we expect the Sharks to be a playoff team this year. And they're sniffing at it like you said they would, Corey. So good on you for that prediction, and thank you for being believing in my team to some degree.
I will say though, with those bottom like wild card spots for the West, I think this year it's gonna come down to the wire. You know what I mean? Like I think those two are not going to be locked up until the last couple games of the season, if not the last game. Like top 3 spots in each division, yeah, file them away by the time we get to season's end. They'll be pretty set with about 10 games remaining, I think. But those 2 wild card spots, I think it'll be a battle between a couple different teams, and I hope the Sharks are still in there for that.
I hope so as well, but it's certainly just the consistency is concerning, and why maybe it's fair to say that they might not be the one to make it through, because Utah has not started, but they've been dropping off. They have these brief moments where they're back in. I mean, they were in starting today, but Chicago has jumped back into that final slot. What it really does is plays into the hands of teams like Edmonton and Winnipeg, because Winnipeg is still just 3 points out with games in hand, and they don't have Hellebuck, and they've been in kind of a form of free fall. And so the fact that they still have a chance, I think everyone should be concerned, because it's when they get healthy, that team's going to be good. So maybe one of the wildcard spots will be locked up by the time we get there.
I will tell you. I will
also,
tell you.
While we're on it,
wait, no, I want to say something about Hellebuck real quick. You know, I was doubtful a bit of his heart win last year, but now seeing how utterly ass Winnipeg is without fucking Connor Hellebuck, I'm like, never mind. He absolutely deserved that Hart trophy.
Yeah, and I mean, we complimented Winnipeg's defense, and that's what they've been built on, but kind of easy to play defense or look good doing it when you got Hellebuck in net, at least during the regular season, that is. But, you know, who knows? I think we can both agree we're happy to see Seattle in free fall, having fallen all the way back to 7th in the wild card race on a 6-game losing streak. So, yay! Fuck the Kraken. Go back to the deep.
Ooh, you suck.
I'm watching them right now.
But yeah, I think are they winning?
They're tied with the Kings.
Oh, well, I guess I kind of hope they win because it's the Kings. But anyway, did you have anything else you wanted to say or complain about the Stars?
I've complained about them ad nauseum. I'll definitely have a lot more to complain about as we go along. But again, I'm trying to stick to the mindset of they're driving the Avalanche to play better and to not allow them to catch them. So I'll try and keep that mindset. I don't like this team at all, but, you know, I think that's just the nature of a rivalry at this point. And we don't play them again until March, so we'll see where we're at then.
Yeah, fair enough. And I do think it's good to have a challenge, have a drive, a team to measure yourself against, to keep pushing. That notion is still good, but God, they're frustrating. But moving on, because there's a game I actually kind of want to talk about this. Well, no, I more than kind of want to talk about this game. It also didn't have the most shots or things to talk about in a way. So anyway, the Hurricanes and the power of Macklin Celebrini. Because after the loss to the Stars, and of course the prior loss to Washington, the Sharks' next destination on their road trip, they're on a road trip, by the way, they're on a 5-game road trip right now, was Raleigh, North Carolina, to face the Hurricanes on Sunday, December 7th. And coaches are good and they know things sometimes, because Colin Graff was promoted to play on the top line with Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith in this game. And before I go on, I feel like I have been hammering the table, always hyping up Colin Graff, because I don't think he gets enough credit or recognition, especially around the league. This guy has battled his way, earned his way into the league, earned his spot, a consistent role, set the goals for himself to be a full-time NHLer, and he's gone out there and done it. Stellar penalty killer. He's like a highlight on this team, and I'll keep pounding the table for him here because he deserves more recognition than he gets, and maybe by playing on the top line, he'll get some of that. And in this segment, he's going to get plenty of that, because Raffer, he quickly rewarded Coach Warsofsky's decision to put him on the Sharks' top line. He scored on the Sharks' first shot 33 seconds into the game. They have a 1-0 lead over Carolina in the Hurricanes building. Now, after getting pummeled by like the other favorite from the Eastern Conference in Washington, and then having that tough loss at the Stars, like, going down and trailing in a game is not the move. So to go on the road and to get the early lead, huge for the momentum and giving the Sharks a real, like, a sense that they were feeling themselves a bit, and they felt a bit more confident and able to compete in the game because of that. And Carolina they are a really good team, and they still played a solid game. They're a hard team to play against. But of course, we got to give the man his flowers as well. A great cutback in the middle of the ice and pass from Celebrini, like with two different Canes bearing down on him from different angles to get the pass to Graff, who put it home. But nonetheless, I'm happy the Sharks got off to an early start. They got some momentum, but the Canes, like I said, good team. They did tie it up on the power play with less than 7 minutes remaining in the first period. And of course, with momentum swings and the Sharks' inconsistency, that really just tilted the ice back in Carolina's favor, because the Sharks did not log another shot from that point on for the rest of the first period. In fact, the Sharks did not register another shot for over 18 minutes of consecutive game time until there was just over 12 minutes remaining in the second period. However, once again, not to give away any themes for later in the segment, but it was defenseman John Klingberg stepping up into the middle of the ice to receive a feed pass from who else? Macklin Celebrini, of course. And Klingberg had a great shot to fire the puck home to give Team Teal a 2-1 lead on the Sharks' first shot of the second period. So Graff scores on their first shot of the first period. Klingberg scores on their first shot of the second period. Not too shabby. I mean, goal's a goal, lead's a lead. But I think it's important to note that even when things aren't going their way, when the goaltending keeps them in it and the Sharks have their chances, they are being efficient with them. That's why they had that high shooting percentage in the league ranks when we were talking a couple of weeks ago. I don't think they've led an opponent in shots on goal, and I mean, shit, I don't know if they did it at all in November. They definitely haven't in December. So when you're that team who's not shooting the puck more often, you have to be shooting it well and efficiently with the shots you get. So I think that's the important part I want to highlight here. And yeah, Sharks were up 2-1 at that point. I can't forget this. Continuing on in the second period, Wenberg also scored a power play goal for the Sharks with less than 5 minutes remaining. It was when William Eklund had fired a shot on net, leading to, it was like one of those rebound passes, if you will, Corey, where it went hard off the pads of the goalie Kochetkov for the Canes that night and straight to Wenberg. So he had a really, really easy chance to fire that one home, and he didn't miss. And so Macklin technically did not get the assist on this one, but in my heart, in my mind, he did and should, because he was responsible for drawing the tripping penalty that put the Sharks on the power play, and he had set up everything in the zone with the first pass, even if it wasn't a more recent enough pass to be credited with an assist. And before the period was over, the momentum again, when the Sharks score, they just start playing better and getting more shots on goal. And when their opponent scores, they just stop shooting and turtle and play defense. That's another key issue I feel like from the Canes game I need to highlight, because not too long after that power play goal, Delandria almost made it 4-1 for the Sharks. And they honestly should have, because he had a give and go to Skinner, got it back, and somehow with like the net like 80% open, he fired it low into Kochetkov's pad in the only area that was being covered on the net. And I was just like, oh, Delhi, come on, man. Like, you got to put that one home. But it was still good to see the energy, to see the Sharks finish the period up 3-1. At the end of this period, though, if I recall, it was still only like 15 shots on goal apiece after 2 periods for the Canes and the Sharks. So a battle, really, not this up and down the ice sprinting and tons of shot opportunities. It was not particularly physical. It wasn't as physical as the game against the Capitals or the Stars, but it was still a tough game where you kind of had to grind it out, if that makes sense, and win ugly to some degree.
I don't know, man. I didn't see too much of this game. I saw about a period, but I did see some of the goals, especially those MacLeod Celebrini ones you were talking about, and it sure as hell looked pretty to me. Also, I just want to highlight what I told you before this game, and I said I needed the Sharks to score 7 goals, and it was pretty funny as we counted them down as they went through this game. And well, they didn't get 7. I'd say 4 is pretty damn good, especially against a defensive juggernaut like Carolina. So that was pretty funny.
And maybe that, I think you make a good point there. Defensive juggernaut, and I think there was better defense from the Sharks than normal. Nedeljkovic was amazing in this game. And I'll get to his exact stat lines here in a bit, but you're right. There weren't, I think maybe it's because there weren't a ton of shot opportunities. There wasn't a ton of zone time, but when MacLeod Celebrini is passing the puck, it did go very well for the team, for Team Teal in this game. And he assisted on both of those first 2 goals. It just, fun fact, I can't believe this, but the Sharks actually have a 9-0-0 record when leading after 2 periods, apparently.
Wow.
I don't think that's this season.
Third period lockdown, huh?
Well, I guess so. Like, I don't quite believe it, but they put the stat on the screen that I took a picture of it and wrote it down, because I was like, wait, that's a great stat for me to talk about, because they only have 8 regulation wins, but apparently when they go into the third period already in the lead, they're 9-0-0. And that feels odd to say. I don't even quite believe it as I'm saying it right now, especially after last year's like third period collapses. And they've certainly still collapsed where it's like they go into the third period tied and get the lead. That doesn't count. They have to be in the lead after 2 periods. Then they haven't lost. So interesting stat line that I was surprised about. And again, I'm still a little apprehensive because I don't quite believe it myself, even as the Sharks fan.
I know. I always love those stats that you see and you're just like, are you sure? Are you sure about that? I don't believe that. That's not real.
Yeah, exactly. And well, and it's just, they do this thing where if they have the lead, they just drop back and play defense. And what is their biggest flaw? It's their defense. So, I mean, the Sharks allowed the Canes to possess the puck much more in the third period, which led to a larger disparity in shots on goal. And like I said before, the Canes are really good. So these weren't just shots for shot's sake. They were dangerous chances. But like I said, Ned held firm and strong in net. He had 28 saves on 29 shots, not allowing a single one past him outside of the first period. I want to say it was the first period. Maybe I'm forgetting, and I actually already said earlier that it happened in the second. No, it was in the first. But I think he deserved the accolades he got for this game. He was the Sharks player who was wearing the tooth necklace that Ryan Reeves got in the locker room, which I believe is well deserved. But in particular, during the 6-on-5, there were just multiple series or multiple cycles when he had to make like 2 or 3 saves in a row, including ones that you just look at and are like, that should have been a goal. where he's just flashing the pad and kicking his leg out after he's already kind of falling down. It was stressful is the problem. Like the Sharks, yes, they've won these games, but it doesn't feel like they're doing it well or doing it pretty at the end because Carolina kept looking very, very dangerous. And like I said, I thought there were a couple of chances that should have gone in on that 6-on-5, but Ned said no, and we're all good with that. But eventually, with less than 90 seconds left, because they won, I want to say they pulled him with like at least 3 minutes. They pulled Kochetkov, I want to say, in this one. And so while the Sharks were still in their own D zone, I want to say it was Ferraro actually had lost his stick, the defenseman. So it was looking like, oh no, what's about to happen here? We've seen this story before, Sharks fans. But Celebrini wins a race and a battle on the boards for the puck, gets it forward to Wenberg, who kind of like self-passed it a little bit so he could try to get some space. Barely held off Seth Jarvis and won the battle at the blue line, was taken down, but recovered or stayed on like a knee and a skate enough that he could pass it back to Celebrini for the empty netter. It would have been drawing a delayed penalty in the process, so it would have effectively made it 5-on-5 with the goalie pulled, or the Sharks would have a power play and Carolina would wave the white flag. But the reason I mentioned the empty netter is because I was honestly a little concerned, Corey, because Celebrini shot the puck in rather aggressively at point blank range when he took that empty net goal. And I have seen other teams and cases and things just on YouTube. It's very easy to find where there is anger and retaliation from disgruntled opponents against players who do that, who aggressively hit an empty netter or kind of showboat it a little bit. I've seen guys lose their cool and go cross-check someone in the face. Thankfully, Carolina took the loss at home with some class and did not go after the superstar Celebrini. But man, I was legitimately concerned. I was like, MacLeod, I get it. You're trying to make sure it doesn't miss, but you hit the puck that close with that much authority. You are opening the door that someone will have an excuse to come charging at you and try to hurt you. So glad they didn't, but maybe that's just a problem with certain players in the league, and I shouldn't be concerned about it or feel like it's this thing that needs to be credited, but it's out there. I've witnessed it, so I do want to respect the Canes being a first-class organization and not falling to that level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Canes aren't particularly known for any goonery, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, they're a team I've definitely been rooting for the last few seasons when they had Burnsy, and I wanted him to get the cup. So I do have if I have a team in the East, I have a soft spot for Carolina, at least from the last few years, where I don't have any ill will towards them, and like I said, they seem like a first class organization. But back to the stats, because I'm almost through this game. The empty net goal was the third point of the night for Celebrini after he had assisted on the Sharks' first 2 goals, like I mentioned. And MacLeod truly was the engine that drove the Sharks' offense in this 4-1 victory, which ended, fun fact, an 8-game losing streak for the Sharks against Carolina, going all the way back to 2022. Another fun fact that tells you how crazy busy this season has been, Corey, you mentioned it, about 3 games in 4 days and 4 and 6, and how it just keeps happening all over the league. This was the Sharks' 30th game in just 59 days since puck drop for the season against Vegas in October.
Jeez. It's a game
30 games. It's more than a game every other day, technically. It's absurd. It's absurd. And it's crazy with these Olympic seasons, which I didn't write it down here, but brief mentioned because it's all in the news and you've probably heard it. Yes, the Olympic ice is going to be slightly different size than the NHL standard. Going to be 3 and some change feet shorter, but it's going to be wider. People are freaking out about it in some places I've seen online. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, you want to know what's funny to me about that? Sorry to cut you off. It's like, you're exactly right. People are freaking out about it online. You know who's not freaking out? The players. The players, when they're asked about it, they're like, what do you think about it? They're like, I don't care. So to me, If the hockey players themselves don't give a shit, then I also don't give a shit.
Yeah, absolutely, Corey. And the one thing I was just going to add is they've literally played on the same size ice earlier this year with that series in Sweden between, I want to say it was Pittsburgh, and Nashville.
Correct.
That played that one. It was the same size ice that they're going to be playing on for the Olympics, and it was perfectly fine. So, just while it seemed natural to bring up, if you are worried about it, don't be. It's really not a big deal for all of you listening.
Yeah, all that matters is that they get that fucking arena built. But anyway, carry on, Dom.
Yeah, that honestly, yeah, that's its own thing. I don't know if we have time for that one to this episode, but man, that I'm a little concerned. But in the interest of carrying on, and the one commonality between the Sharks and the Avs this week was a certain opponent, which I think you did a good job complimenting and describing earlier, Corey. We might have some overlap there, but the Flyers and the power of one shot. In hindsight, the fact that Colin Graf scored on the first shot of the first period and Klingberg scored on the Sharks' first shot of the second period against Carolina, maybe should have considered using that title in the Carolina game. Hindsight being 2020, but whatever. Now you have some insight to why I chose the name for this game, because we'll get there in a minute, but I did have some notes from before the Flyers game, or just some news, if you will. So I'm going to run through those quickly because Reeves had missed a couple of games with a few minor injuries. He was back in the lineup for this game against Philly, which, Corey, you mentioned. They're a physical team. They don't mind hitting people and being physical out there. So having Reeves in the lineup crucial for the Sharks. Which also meant that Skinner was a healthy scratch after recently returning from his time on injured reserve earlier in the week. And when asked about it, I really liked what Coach Warsofsky had to say, because he emphasized wanting that heavier fourth line to contend with Philadelphia's physicality. Like I said, we've mentioned that. But he also credited the fourth line center, Zach Ostapchuk, who was on the returning end from that Zetterlund trade. And while that Zetterlund trade, I think we've talked about it, Corey, is maybe one of the L's that Greer has taken, the few L's that he's taken as GM. I do think that for being a bruising fourth line, that big fourth line you can roll of Gaudreau, Stepchuk, and Reeves, it's not fun to play against. And Coach Warsofsky was saying how he believed Stepchuk has done really well, and that the whole coaching staff has been impressed with meeting the I won't say goals, because he hasn't scored any goals this year, but the objectives, the expectations that the Sharks bench has for him. And they wanted to continue giving him opportunities to play and develop his game. So I kind of liked seeing him in the lineup instead of Skinner, especially when it comes to the fourth line. I think he's going to be better on the fourth line than someone like Skinner is. I think Skinner has more of the flashy offensive talent, and he's not all that flashy. He's middle six, probably third line, but he's not the big physical bruising guy on a fourth line, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It does indeed.
In other news, Nedeljkovic was the last-minute starter in net for this game, so playing his second game in a row, because Askarov was unable to start, or even back up for that matter, due to an illness. He is traveling today, or as you hear this, he would have traveled yesterday, to catch up with the team in Toronto for their next game, and is expected or projected to start in net if he's healthy, but I will obviously be bringing you the latest on that in our next episode to see how he's recovering from his illness. But why that's fun is because if he wasn't even able to be on the bench in a backup role, that meant that the Sharks had to sign an emergency backup goaltender named Justin Kowalkowski on an ATO for the night to serve as Ned's backup. Now, he is the emergency backup goalie for the Flyers organization, or EBUG. I'd never heard that acronym before, but I thought that was fun, EBUG. And while he did not see any play, I'm sure the former college goalie and now professional geologist still enjoyed his rookie lap, if you will, ahead of the game and his time on the Sharks bench. It was also kind of cool to see his hints of orange in his pads. It just reminded me of the hints of orange in the old Sharks jerseys while he was still wearing a Sharks jersey, plain white mask, mostly white pads, but those streaks of orange in it. Just, I don't know. There was some nostalgia there. Even though I know it's like Flyers orange, it's still like, I don't know, tickled an inch in my brain where I'm like, yeah, that looks like a Sharks fit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I saw this story though. I always love e-bug stories. And wait, are you saying you're not familiar with the acronym e-bug?
I just had never heard it in that acronym form. Like I know emergency goaltender. I had never in my brain thought of backup.
Huh.
So I never put two and two together that I'd heard e-bug as like said as a term on a broadcast before.
There you go. All right.
Anyways, now on to the actual game. And I did get, this is the game I was able to see through start to finish at a reasonably convenient time and get solid notes. So ironically, this probably is my most thorough notes. So to summarize, the Flyers got out to a quick start. They shot it a lot more. They were faster in winning battles to pucks, and they weren't more physical technically. The Sharks had more hits, 10 more hits to be exact, but it felt like they were winning the physical battles, if that makes sense, where even if they took a hit, they were still winning the puck. But into the nitty-gritty details, the Flyers had 3 shots on goal in less than 45 seconds of play. And after that, it was like 30 seconds later, so we're no longer in the first minute of play, but semantics. It was a birthday breakaway for Matvei Michkov to get in alone on Alex Nedeljkovic, and Ned made the save. And I wasn't sure if he made it at first, and there was a follow-up chance I felt like that could have been there for Michkov, but didn't realize it was his birthday until I heard the Flyers broadcast in like a highlights thing, just looking back over it. He did not score on that one, so no birthday happiness for him on that one. But really got Ned's head in the game early because he had to have his head on a swivel right from the start. And for the Sharks, slow start, they did not have a shot attempt really until a little over 6 minutes into the first period, like a real scoring chance when Adam Gaudette, he had fired a shot that it would have beat the goaltender, but it went off the crossbar, which, Corey, as you know, but for those who don't know, the crossbar, and if you hit the post, does not count as a shot on goal. So the Sharks remained at 0 on the stat sheet for shots on goal for even more minutes of play. I mean, and meanwhile, the Flyers kept finding the puck on their stick and firing it on net. I mean, at the halfway point of the period, they were out shooting the Sharks 9-0. And I did not feel good about it at all. That means they went 11 and a half minutes without a ugly. But I've already described it. This segment is titled "The Power of One Shot" for a reason, because sometimes all it takes is one shot to get a goal, and in this case, a lead. Because that Sharks' first shot on net was the first shot of the game that was in the net. And for Graffer, that's 3 straight games with a goal. All of those being on the road, no less. So, again, I'm saying this kid deserves credit. I don't know if I should call him a kid. He's not that much younger than me, but, force of habit. But, man, Corey, I did find a fun fact associated with this. And
Love fun
I'm
facts.
not sure for certain if you'll know, but I do want to ask you this one anyway. Do you know the
Muffin
last
Man?
San Jose Shark? That was perfect. That was well timed. Yes, I do know the Muffin Man, but tell me more.
Muffin Man.
Okay. I if I went for the actual quote, we'd be here forever and just going back and forth quoting the movie. But anyway, do you know who was the last San Jose Shark to score in 3 or more consecutive road games?
Would I even know who this Shark is? Would I have a chance?
Yes. In fact, if you would like a hint, I can tell you it was during the... Okay.
I mean, Joe Thornton.
It is not Joe Thornton. Would you like the hint now?
Joe Pavelski.
It was not someone named Joe.
Okay. Patrick Marleau.
No, I'm giving you the hint. It was in the 2016-17 season.
Brent Burns.
Ding, 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 actually. It was Burnsy, everyone's favorite Wookiee, who scored a goal in 8 consecutive road games.
As a defenseman, that's impressive.
Absolute road warrior.
Wow.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I mean, 2016-17, that would have been when we had Carlson as well. So peak offensive defenseman days for the Sharks before everything went off a cliff. I just thought that was cool. A little crossover between our worlds now with Burnsy being on the Avalanche and my favorite Avs player now because, obviously. But the point is that one shot can truly make all the difference in a game. Because even though it was the Sharks' first shot and they had no business leading in the game, they found themselves up 1-0. However, in reality, it's just not sustainable. And the Sharks finished the period with a measly 3 shots on goal compared to 16 for Philadelphia. And while Nedeljkovic did a really great job in the period and fought off a lot of chances for the Flyers, he just couldn't stop them all every single time. And I think part of the problem was, I mentioned it or I hinted at before, was just the pace at this game. A lot of up and down, back and forth rush chances, a lot of 2-on-1s or odd man chances out of position. In this one, Dickinson went for a poke check on the puck and missed, so he just left an opening where it was easy to get behind him. So, was Nedeljkovic beat? Yes. Was it be entirely his fault? No, because Dickinson was trying to go for the puck instead of playing his position and playing the man. And that is something that we hope to see improve with time. Also, credit to Dvorak, whose silky hands would not be denied, because the cut to the middle, Ned committed and he went around him, and it was really pretty. Gotta give respect to the man for the shot or for the deke, if you will. And that did even up the scoreboard at 1 goal apiece late in the first period. Will Smith did almost get that goal right back on a rush chance of his own in the final minute of the period, but Vladar made a really good save. It didn't look like he saw it. It kind of like hit him in the shoulder, and he was looking the other way before it fell down in front of him. But ultimately it was just, it does not work if you don't get the puck on the net. You can't expect it to go in the net. I think the Sharks, in a large sense, even though they had the lead in this first period, they were lucky to not be trailing after the first period, getting outshot 16-3. It was similar to that Dallas game where they were lucky to only be down 1-0 after the first period. There was also, right at the end of the period, I almost forgot to mention this, there was a delayed hooking penalty called against Gaudette for the Sharks with just under 5 seconds before the horn sounded. So the Sharks did not actually end up touching up or getting clear possession before the end of the period. So I don't think I've actually seen this before, really. But the Flyers actually started the second period with a full 2-minute power play. And Sharks were actually able to kill off the power play, but it still really negated any chance of shifting the momentum or bouncing back coming out of intermission, try to get more shots on goal. It felt like that sucked the air out of any momentum swing. And with 16:40 remaining in the period, or 3 minutes and 20 into the period, so a minute 20 after the power play expires, former Shark Carl Grunstrom got his first goal in a Flyers sweater on a redirect to give Philly a 2-1 lead. Now, I don't know if this is a fun fact, but since he was traded by the Sharks at the end of the preseason, so on October 5th of this year, this was only his second game actually playing for the Flyers NHL squad instead of for the AHL affiliate Lehigh Valley Phantoms.
One of my favorite
so
AHL
I just thought
names.
that was... Yeah, it's a sick name, right? But I just, kind of fits with the parallel. And I had written it here. I wasn't sure if I was going to mention it, but guy gets his first goal for a team against the Sharks. So can't be the Avalanche now. He can't score his first against you guys. So yay, we did our part. He got his revenge on us. It makes me so happy. And yeah, yada, yada, yada. Obviously sarcastic. But from here, I think we know the outcome because these games all ended 4-1 and the Flyers are up 2-1. And I just didn't feel like the Sharks ever really had a a chance in this game, honestly, because it just I don't need to be too thorough. It was frantic. It was physical. It was hard to get possession or a cycle and consistent chances. And there were defensive lapses and rushes each way, but they just seemed to have poke checks or last minute things where they weren't connecting for the Sharks as well as the chances were for Philly. And Ned had to make saves. Vladar made his saves for Philly. It just, it's hard to really find anything in particular other than just a little, I don't know, sloppy maybe. And maybe it wasn't sloppy. Maybe I think Philly is a really good team. So maybe they just made the Sharks look sloppy. But it just, I don't know. I did feel like, even though I took thorough notes in this game, I did just feel like they weren't competitive enough where I don't think there was a point where I thought they would win this game. And their shot count improved. They had 8 shots in the second period compared to 10 for Philadelphia, so they weren't getting dominated the way they were in the first period. It just, again, didn't feel like they were threatening or dangerous. And even though they did still have their occasional chances because they got rushes too, the defensive lapses went both ways. These are both young teams rebuilding and working their way back up from being at the bottom of the standings last year. So they're very similar in that regard. I think maybe Philly has more established talent to maybe get them there sooner without, well, I mean, it's debatable with the same superstar overhead. I mean, last year Celebrini and Michkov were comparable, and in the trophy voting, I mean, they had the same number of points and only 1 goal difference between the two of them last year. Anyway, I'm rambling again, but point is, Sharks still had their chances. It wasn't pretty. It didn't feel dangerous, and Philly landed an absolute dagger with 11 seconds left in the period to go up 3-1. That is when I knew this game was over, because 11 seconds left. They also scored late in the first period too, right? So it's just those goals in the last 5 minutes of a period, and then you have to go into the intermission. And yeah, you can try to get back, but those just get to you. Those are hard, especially for a goaltender when you just got to sit there and think about it. So I felt like the game was over at that point, and Philly played defense for most of the third period, so the Sharks actually outshot them, but they still only got 7 shots in the third period, despite the Flyers playing defense the entire fucking third period. And they eventually did get an empty netter to seal the game for, of course, a 4-1 win as the real theme of the tank this week, other than that blowout defeat by Washington. Just going back to the power of a single shot, though, I have to say this. The Sharks hit the post multiple times in the first period. I mentioned the crossbar. Wenberg also hit the post, which could have made a huge difference with how well Ned played. I mean, it wasn't his best game. It wasn't over 500 on the save percentage for the night, but Ned was nearly there. He finished with 26 saves on 29 shots faced, and some dangerous ones at that. Like I said, it wasn't perfect, but it was rather admirable performance. And another night, if the Sharks actually put the goals in the net, could have been enough to win. And, you know, when you consider the fact that he had to face 16 shots in the first period and was just absolutely shelled for 10 minutes on end when the Sharks couldn't get any offense going, I can't fault Ned for this one at all. But going back to the post, it's really impactful in the power of a single shot, where when the Sharks were still down just 2 goals and had hit 2 posts in the first period alone and another one in the second period, those couple of inches just to the left, to the right, or up or down, or, well, I guess not up. There's no post on the ice, but you know what I mean, is the difference between other goals going in and the Sharks still being in this game, even though they didn't feel like they were the most in it. So I think that's what brought me to the conclusion of why this game is why the power of a single shot matters. And Corey, I've been rambling for a while here, so I would just like to give you a chance in case there's anything else you wanted to say about the Flyers, about this game, about patterns of the Sharks, or just tell me how I'm a crazy rambler.
I think the ultimate conclusion that I have is sometimes, even if you're not playing poorly, you're just the second best team on the ice, right? And unfortunately, I haven't been able to catch as much Sharks hockey. Hell, I've barely been able to catch Avalanche hockey these past few weeks as I would like to. So I can't really speak to some of the playing patterns that they've been demonstrating as of recent. They're on a bit of a slowdown since I think a hotter start to the season, but I do think we're seeing just more consistent play out of this team. in general, even in losing efforts, excluding Washington. So again, I think we'll see the Sharks flirting with 30 wins this season. Hopefully 75 plus points would be even better than that. So we'll keep an eye. What's their schedule like this week?
Yeah, so looking ahead, they have 2 more of these games on the road, tied for their longest road trip of the year. So at Toronto, when you are hearing this on Thursday the 11th.
That's winnable.
And then, it is winnable. And then at Pittsburgh on the 13th, which I do find it kind of dumb. You go Philly, Toronto, Pittsburgh instead of doing Philly and Pittsburgh back to back, whatever. Yeah. And that one's an afternoon game on Saturday the 13th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. In case any of you are trying to catch it, I'll do my best, but I can't promise anything on that one because I do actually have plans that afternoon to see my friends' babies because I have not met either of them, and one of them is 2 now. So I'm very excited because love that little family of theirs and glad to get to meet those kids. But anyway, that's not the point of this. Their final game of the upcoming week is on Tuesday when they're back at home against the Calgary Flames. And last time I said that should be a win, it was one of their ugliest performances of the season. So I'm not going to say it right now, even if I believe it should be, if that makes sense.
It does. Well, thank you.
But you're right, Corey, because they were better in November. October, they were slow. They had those 6 straight losses to start the year, even if they probably should have won the first 2. But then they were win one, lose one. And then they got on that hot streak in November and were playing a lot better. It was more like win 2, lose 1 or win 2, lose 2 type of thing. But they are very much on a win, lose 1 type of 500 pattern right now. So with that in mind, win at Toronto, lose at Pittsburgh, win versus Calgary. I'd be happy to talk about 2 wins when we come to you next week.
We are hoping for 2 wins next week, everybody. Well, thank you for your time in the tank today, Dom. Hopefully there's some more positive takeaways next week than there were this week.
And before we fully exit the tank, I did actually remember, and I revised what I said before. So instead of trying to say, I realized you said players of the week, and I'd been saying stars of the week, but not actually the stars, obviously. So renaming it 3 Sharks of the week.
All right.
I just want to get that in there because, I'm going to go with the honorable mention to Macklin Celebrini and not put him in one of the 3 stars of the week. And that might sound crazy to all the Sharks fans, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to stand on it because he didn't have any points in the other games, but he absolutely dominated the game in Carolina and was key to their win. So maybe he should be on there. I don't know. I would rather give that honor to, I'm going to say John Klingberg at number 3. 3 points in the last 2 games for the Sharks. That great goal. He's had his ups and downs this year, so I want to give him credit when he's playing well. At number 2, definitely going to give it to Alex Nedeljkovic because I think he goaltended well enough to win 2 of those games, and the third one he was called in relief in a blowout against Washington, so I'm not even going to fault him for that one. And number 1, anybody could guess it. It's Colin Graf. He deserves to be number 1 Shark of the week. He deserves to stay on this top line. Look at this graph because you're going to be seeing more of him because he's going to get more minutes on that top line. So anyway, sorry I pulled back at the end there, Corey, to bring us back in the tank. But now I will let us all take a break from being underwater and come back to the surface.
No, I didn't mean to pull you out of the tank unnecessarily, so I apologize in that regard, Dom.
No worries at all. I'm happy to hear whatever you have to say and hear who the Avalanche players of the week were as well.
Who says I have fucking shit to say, my boy? No, I'm kidding. I do. The 3 Avalanche players of the week are Mackenzie Blackwood, Marty Netchis, and Nathan MacKinnon. Nathan MacKinnon, first NHL player to 50 points this year. Hopefully first to 100. Hopefully first to 140. He's on a tear. He's on pace for 67 goals this year, which would be far and away his career high. So I think there's no limit to the dog. Your fun fact today. A short one. But if you've been an Avalanche fan for about as long as I have, then this will resonate with you. Or longer, obviously. With their win over the Philadelphia Flyers, the Avalanche have tied their season point total from the 2016-17 season, 48 points, in just 29 games. In the 2016-17 season, In 82 games, the Avalanche could only muster 22 wins total. They are already about to match that, or did match that, in 52 fewer games.
Wow. That's a crazy 180 stat right there.
So if your team is struggling right now, just keep believing. Sometimes it just takes a couple years to turn it all around, but you too can be like the Avalanche. Well, everyone, the clock is counting down to the final horn. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of the Captain Avalanche Fancast. If you have something you want to know about the Avalanche, Sharks, or just hockey in general, reach out to us on our socials or email, and we'll be happy to try and answer it. The best thing you can do if you like what we're doing here is to follow us on whatever platform you're using and to share this podcast everywhere you can with everyone you can. I'm Captain Avalanche Corey.
And I'm Dom from the Tank.
Check out our new episodes every Thursday. Thanks, everyone.